طيب, we proceed with the final question, which reads as follows. Is Ramadan a good time to seek to rectify matters of the heart? And I think this is something that has really been answered in the previous question or two. Absolutely. If you look at the setting that Allah Ta'ala gives us, Shaitan is locked up, Jahannam is closed shut, Jannah is opened wide. If one reads Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani's Fath al-Bari and his commentary on this particular narration, you'd see that there's various interpretations to this. Some have looked at it very literally, while others have looked at it more metaphorically, and both interpretations are valid. So the metaphorical interpretation actually teaches us a thing or two. The one is that the meaning for the doors of Jahannam being shut is that the pathways to evil are limited, are restricted because of the strength that fasting gives the believing men and the believing women. The pathways to goodness are so vast and so many, and in this sense the doors of Jannah are open because there are so many ways to get to Jannah. There are so many facilitations for Jannah. And then Shaitan being locked up as also, some metaphorical interpretations in that the believer's defense mechanism against Shaitan is actually heightened, and because of the taqwa and the dhikr and the spirit of Ramadan, Shaitan is practically locked up and not able to face the believer. Of course, the literal interpretation stands as well, but the point here being the setting that Allah Ta'ala gives us in Ramadan is such that it's the best time to work on these goals that we have for our inner selves. It's the best time to differentiate between what is a temptation from Shaitan and what is a problem with my own nafs. It's the best time to deal with the nafs without having to worry about the external enemy. It's like the training ground, essentially. So if you imagine a professional fighter, right? And I know some people won't be happy with that example, but if you look at a professional fighter and the training that a professional fighter has to endure, the training is not going to be very beneficial if it is going to happen in an actual fight. The professional fighter would have a sparring partner, yes, but with a sparring partner, it's not a serious opponent. It's a man with whom he's practicing his skill. The training takes place in the space of a gym where everything is safe and the fighter is not fearing for his life and he's not worried about the limitations of time and so forth because it's training, right? The opponent has been removed. The opponent is in a different gym. When the two fighters come together in one particular arena, now they put the training into action. So if you look at that example, Ramadan is the training ground. Ramadan is where your opponent gets locked up and you have all these facilities to strengthen yourself. So you are in a gym, you're working out your taqwa muscles, reading Quran, pumping those muscles, fasting, you're pumping those muscles, standing in Taraweeh, you're training your endurance, you're training your muscles. So all of this training takes place. Then Ramadan leaves and suddenly your opponent is now in the ring and the nafs is there and the environment is there. And it's no longer, weights and kit gloves and so forth. Now it's the real deal. Now you are actually in the arena. So in this sense, whatever you've built up in Ramadan is meant to carry you through till the next Ramadan or until you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The final point that I wish to make about this is that often we have an expectation of ourselves that, look, in Ramadan, I'm here, and then after Ramadan, I'm here. So I start here, I go up here, and then I end up here again. I think that this is a very unwise way of going about Ramadan. If you imagine taqwa to be on a scale of 10, where 0 is being a non-Muslim and 10 is being a wali of Allah, a friend of Allah. If before Ramadan we were on a 2, and then in Ramadan we went up to a 5 or a 6, for example, then the objective is to not go back to being a 2. That after Ramadan, yes, you will go back because the Prophet ﷺ, he worked harder in Ramadan than any other time. So if that was him, ﷺ, naturally we also won't be able to work as hard in Ramadan as opposed to outside of Ramadan. but don't go back to being exactly where you were before Ramadan. So if you were a 2, and then in Ramadan you went up to a 5 or a 6, then when you come back down, for the very least, only go back down to a 3. Don't go back down to being a 2. If you can, and if you are really eager and you work hard, perhaps you can go back to a 4 or 4.5 and stay there, inshallah ta'ala. But the very bare minimum is to not go back down to being a 2. If you go back down to being a 2, next year Ramadan, you're going to do the same thing. So if you want to benefit from the kafara, right, the expiation of one Ramadan to the next Ramadan, which is an expiation for whatever transpires between the two of that, and you don't just want it to be make some sins, erase those sins, make those sins again, erase those sins again. If you actually want to progress, spiritual progress, getting closer and closer to Allah as we move through life, then we need to make a concerted effort to maintain some of what Ramadan had brought us and consistently use that as we proceed.
La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah.